John said, my name is Jake Spurlock. I'm from Utah. And in case you want to get in touch with me, I'm whyisjake on Twitter and whyisjake@gmail.com. It's a little play on words if you get it. But, or you can see my site at jakespurlock.com. Sure, looking for me there. Got a contact form. So today, I want to talk about the loop. But before, I have to say I survived the drive home last night. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but it was the craziest drive home in a 15-passenger van that you may have ever seen. Speeds far beyond the speed limit, over speed bumps, almost killing pedestrians, all at the hands of the wheel, our older gentleman who was driving us back from the restaurant. So anyways, it was a hashtag from last night. So, is there any developers in the house? Who calls himself a developer? Anybody? Is there anybody who's a theme-specific developer? Anybody do theme-specific, like a front-end developer? Is anybody a hacker who doesn't really know how to do anything, but you can kind of make stuff do what you want to do? That's most of us? Okay. So I'm really kind of targeting towards, I'll say hackers. The people who don't, like I don't consider myself a developer, but I do know how to do things in WordPress. And so I want to educate us all a little bit better about how to use the loop and how to make it better and more effective for all of us. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to introduce the loop, go over some basic template tags, talk about custom queries, multiple loops page, and then kind of round it out with how to use the loop with custom post types. Okay? So to get started, oh, and by the way, I've got a lot of roller coaster loops. I thought those images worked well into the presentation. I was like, how could I make, now you know. What's that? Like the puns and the metaphors. This is not just going to be code, but poorly crafted puns and metaphors also will also get tossed in here. Okay, so look at some code here. The world's simplest index page. Has anybody used 2010? It's the new WordPress default theme. 2010 is actually a really cool theme because aside from how it looks very nice and clean. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of really cool things going on there. And it looks like, one sec, it looks like this. This is a file in that theme called loop.php. And I know you can't see it very well, but some of the more important stuff will show up a little bit better, I think. The cool thing about the loop.php, though, is while loop.php, this is what's going to show up on your page as part of your content. So your title, your post content, your things that you may be doing with custom fields, post thumbnails, stuff like that. So the cool thing about the loop.php file is we can actually just delete everything in there, and then we can kind of go and rebuild something specific for us. So right now I've got this WordPress installed right here, WordCamp Vegas, and right now I have nothing in my loop.php file. So nothing shows up on the page, okay? So what I want to do is I want to rebuild a loop to show all the kind of cool things that it can do. So I've got sample code here because I've done this enough where if you don't have it copied down, it won't work. Okay, so here is our world's simplest index page. What we do is we start by saying, basically running a query. We start by saying if we have posts, and I think that English is the best language to read code in. So I'll just kind of, I'm going to tell you how I read it. If we have posts, that's our first check, right? So do we have posts in our database? In the case of my site right here, yes, we have one. We have that, hello world post, right? So if we have posts, and that returns true, okay, so while we have posts, give us the post. So the first thing that we say here that we want to show is the content. Okay, so if we kind of break some stuff up here and make it look a little simpler. Okay, so all we're saying right here is display the content. So we go back to our page, and now here's our content. Welcome to WordPress. This is your first post. Edit it, delete it, or start blogging. So what we're going to do is we're going to start introducing template tags into our post. And so this is where people, if you're not a developer, if you're that hacker, you're like, well, I really like how this looks, but I wish that I could show something more or show something different or add more stuff. This is how we're going to do it. So I want to introduce, let's see here. So here's our simplest index page, and then we talk about, what I'm going to show you is the template tags. Or my little sub caption here, the bread and butter of theme designers. This is what you're using every day. Like if I showed you, let me show you here. On my Google search, if we search for template tags, I like the Google history here. Oh, and of course the internet's not working, which we figured on. But I just wanted to see, I've been to that site. It shows like 470 visits to the page. So, because I'm always looking that up because I always have questions and stuff like that. Okay, but I've got some of them listed here. Oh, and it doesn't even say it. Bummer. Okay, I have a bunch listed here. The content. The content is the content of your blog post. That's the big box on the admin area, right? You have the title, then you have the content. So the content, the title. What's the permalink? What's that? It's the slug, but really it's the full URL for that post, right, that has the slug in it. The category, it's the category that post is posted in. And the tags are the tags. The date is the date the post was posted. The date the post was posted. The excerpt, which, how do you say that word? Did I say it right?
Yes, you just did.
Excerpt, right? Because there's a lot of consonants in there. The meta, what's the meta? Buddy? What's that? Exactly, it's custom fields. Then the ID is the post ID, post thumbnail. What's the post thumbnail? As of 2.9, what is it?
Featured image.
It's our featured image. And what a cool thing the post thumbnail is, right? You guys remember the old days of WordPress? Upload your image, make sure it's scaled right in Photoshop, take the URL, post it into a custom field, make sure to give it the right ID in your custom field, and then publish it. And if your user got all of those steps right, it would still be scaled wrong, and they would still be botched, right? And so then we're like, oh, we can use Tim Thumb. And then that still didn't work, and whatever. Okay, the author is the author who posted it. The short link. Anybody know what the short link is? This is kind of a new one that not a lot of people know about.
Tiny URL.
It's the tiny URL of their blog post. Now, when does this show up, though? You don't have to click, well, that's on the back end, but we can actually have that show up on the front end of the site. We can actually, so we can build like a tweet this button using the WordPress.com. You know that WP.me? We can actually, if you have the WordPress.com stats plugin, it'll return the short link with the WordPress.com short link on the front end. So you can actually provide that URL on the front end of your site. I'll show you how to do that in a sec. And then edit post link is that edit button for your site. Okay, so let's write some code here. So right now we just have the content, right? This would be kind of a bland website if we just showed the content. What's normally the first thing that we put? The title, right? So I'm going to say the_title. Now, we have variables that we can pass into the title. And I use BB-edit, so you can kind of, well, never mind, you can't see them. I can see them. But the first variable that you can pass is your string before, string after, bool echo, and then close it out. So the string before, what we can do is we can actually say, I want to echo out something before the title, and then my bool after, or string after, I can say echo something out after. So what I'm going to do is say before, I'm going to say add an h2 tag, or actually I'm going to do a h1 tag, h1, and then my string after, I'm going to say let's close that h1. And then bool echo, I'm just going to get rid of that, sorry, and add the right stuff here. So now, on my post, for WordCamp Vegas, we get an h1 tag put around our title, right? So if we look at our source code for this, hello world, we get an h1, surrounding the title of our post. Now, one other little trick that you can do. See, the thing here, we could do it like this, right? Or we could just say, get rid of all the stuff in the middle, and then we close our PHP up here, and we start it again down here, and then we end it. Couldn't we just say like this, like just do an h1 tag like this? Does that work too? Assuming that I start this, right? This also works, right? But what's the cooler way to do it? The more complicated way. So that's the way I like to do it. So not the more complicated way, but it's just I just like to have PHP work for me. The reason that you see, like WordPress will do stuff like this, but they'll wrap echo tags around it in a similar fashion. That way it can be done for translation. So you're saying like echo out like featured, like if you have a featured post, you could echo out featured, but then tie that in for translation and stuff. Because in English we say featured, but in French we say something in French. Okay. All right. Let's look at some other examples here. Okay. So the way that, this is kind of the nifty way to do it. We can say the title, and then in there we can say h1 class entry title. This is the class that WordPress has assigned for CSS to make it look nice, is entry title. And then we can say ahref equals get permalink. So what does get permalink do? Anybody? Yeah, just it gets that URL for us, and then we can assign that. So now instead of just being a blank h1 tag, now it's an h1 with a link into that post itself. Okay. So we have the content. Let's look at some of our other ones here. One of my favorite ones is to talk about the author. We can just say the author. The author. And this will return, in this case, Jake Spurlock. Whatever your display name publicly is set at in your user profile, it'll return that. There's one other option. You can say the author underscore link. And what this will do is it'll return a link, the link that your user has set, if they've set in the, what's it called? /wp-admin. Yeah, it's just whatever your blog URL or whatever is set at, your website for your contact info, it'll return that out as your thing. Okay, so we've got our author link. So let's see here. So let's say, so what we can do now, this is HTML5, so we can use our small tag without feeling like a noob. Small, and then we can say posted by the author link on PHP the date so now we'll get an error because I forgot a semicolon. So now we get posted by Jake Spurlock on October 23rd, 2010. Now there's another cool little WordPress function that not a lot of people know about. I wanted to share with you guys, and it's called human time diff. Has anybody heard of this function before? Human time diff? Austin has, because he's a genius. What human time diff does is it says, it gives us the difference in time in like a human readable format. So what we have here is we say echo, then human time diff, and we have get the time, which returns the time in hours, and then current timestamp is timestamp ago. And so in English, what it will return is 6 hours ago. Sorry, right there. So it'll say posted by Jake Spurlock on the date, and then what I can say is I can add a little space in here. And then I can say so in my little thing here now I have posted by Jake Spurlock on October 23rd, 2010, about 6 hours ago. Or it's when I created this post. So it's kind of a nice little way to give your blog a human readable format. It's also really nice to show how little you blog. Last post 147 days ago, or 280 hours ago, if you're not blogging very frequently, right? So with those template tags though, we can build stuff out like that. Okay, some other cool stuff is we have our category tag. So I've got one here. Let's see. Let me close this. So right now I have published as the category. Golly. Published as the category on the date. So this is kind of a similar one here. Which, how about? So what we said here is published as uncategorized on. My date didn't come through. Anybody know why? Can't read that? All right. It didn't come through. Oh well. Okay, and one of my issues that I have with WordPress, the way that these template tags are built, is that by default, the category will display as, let's see here, as an unordered list. So if we just give our category, let's come back here to our loop. If we don't pass any variables through, it'll display our categorized tag here as an unordered list. But if we do our tags, so like, our tags will actually come through inline, or not at all because this doesn't have any tags. Sorry. But our tags will come through inline as part of a paragraph element, or a span rather, where our categories come through as an unordered list by default, which is fine because it's nice to have them both, but I just think that they're both so similar, that they should come through in the same fashion by default. Little personal issue, I guess. I don't mean to take it out on you guys, but.
Well, wouldn't the category be hierarchical and the tag be not?
Yeah, and you can actually say like, get the tags and then return your categories. You can pass that through as a variable. So it's just kind of, I don't know. Anyways, I'm an idiot, and I stay up at night thinking about stuff like this, Yeah. Alrighty. Some of the other interesting stuff. Moving on a little bit. So we've got all of these template tags, and I don't want to go into all of them, but they're all really cool and can do lots of fun stuff with them. As developers, as theme developers, use the post thumbnail because it's really rad. And don't make your users upload images and do all kinds of other stuff with them when you can set all of that stuff. Now there's one other thing. Has anybody built a theme with the post thumbnail and then had to rejigger sizes and stuff like that? Has anybody ever used the Regenerate Thumbnails plugin? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Not the plugin, I use the API.
You use the API. So there's this great plugin, if you've ever had to do this, called Regenerate Thumbnails. And what it'll do is it'll go through your site and regenerate all of the different thumbnail sizes. So let's say in your functions.php file, you set a bunch of custom thumbnails and stuff like that, image sizes. It'll go through and then match up all of those image sizes. It's really handy when you need to make changes. So just a little plug for that. Now, if you go to codex.wordpress.org/template tags, that's where all of these template tags are found, and you can get more information about them. So they're really kind of helpful. Okay, so now moving on a little bit to custom queries. Custom queries is nice because as developers, we need to say, I only want to show this kind of content, or I don't want to show this kind of content, or I need to manipulate the content and how it's shown. So there's two primary ways that we can do this. There's query posts, and then there's get posts, and then there's kind of WP query too, which is another fashion for doing it. Now, can anybody tell me the differences for a prize that John will give you later today?
One of them just will echo it out on the page, and the other returns it for further manipulation.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The first thing, the way that I distinguish them is you use query posts when you want to change every loop on the page. So you're saying like, once again, back to the old days before we had custom post types, a lot of times what we would do is we would say this category, like podcast, right? I have a category called podcast, but I don't want my podcast on the front page, right? So what we would do is on our loop, we would say query post, and then we would say cat name equals minus category 6 or whatever category was our podcast category. So that way, in every loop that would generate, it wouldn't show anything up from that podcast category because we built like a custom archive page or something like that that would show our podcast category, right? Now with custom post types, right, now we just say, well, I'll just put that in this custom post type. One of the best things, and just a little talk about custom post types, like I think that custom post types are really awesome, not because it's a way to add content, because we've always had ways to add content, but it separates content away from other stuff. And I don't know if you guys have thought about it like that, but I think the best part about it is that I can have like my podcast category, which is not my blog, right? Those posts aren't the same thing anymore. They're completely separate and then they're handled differently. Anyways, that's my little vent on custom post types. So query post, when you want to change the main loop, exclude, as an example, it's when you may want to exclude categories from the main loop or show posts only from one category. So on my little loop here that I've built, I've got a query post right here, little array that I've built. So before my if statement, I paste this in. Can you guys see this at all? Sorry. Would it be better like here? Is that more readable? Okay, sorry. See, it's like, I don't know if you like, but it's so neat the way I have it. Is that better? Sorry, guys. What if the font was a little bigger? Even better? All right. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. So before our if statement is where we put our query posts. So in this case, I have an array built where I say post per page equals 5, and then category equals -1. So in this case, I really only have one post, right? It's just my Hello World post, which is published in the uncategorized category, which I wish they would change the name on that. Couldn't it just be called posts? Wouldn't that be better? Whatever. What's that? Oh, okay. Okay, so on this, what I'm saying is post per page equals 5, and then category equals -1. I save this, go back, and it disappears because I have an error. All right. Okay, so now my sidebar's back because I don't have PHP errors. But all of my content is gone, right? Because with my query post, I said, for every post that shows up on this page, minus out the uncategorized category, so nothing shows up. So now if I change this to category equals 1, now only posts from the uncategorized category will show up. And if I had 40 posts, only 5 would show up on this page because I have post per page equals 5. Now the nice thing about this, if you've ever done, what's our other one? WP query and get post. If you've ever done get post, a lot of times you'll have pagination issues. And so the nice thing about query posts is it'll always work with pagination. You hit the next button, it'll show you the next 5 posts, the next 5 posts, blah, 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 on and on and on. Okay? All right. Let's see. Okay. Now, important note here about query posts. And this comes straight out of the codex. The query post function is intended to be used to modify the main loop page only. It is not intended as a means to create secondary loops on the page. If you want to create separate loops outside of the main one, and this is where I know I've gotten into trouble before, I'll just be like, well, I've got my loop here. Why don't I just change some parameters and then build a second loop? That will not work. So if you want to create separate loops outside of the main page, you should use get posts instead. And use of query posts on loops other than the main one can result in your main loop becoming incorrect and possibly displaying things that you were not expecting. So shit can happen, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That can work. Whoever said that? Yes, that can work. Just the best practice, though, is to use query posts, to use WP query. And then query separate objects for each loop that you're doing. So the query post function overrides and replaces the main query for the page. To save your sanity, do not use it for any other purpose. So just one of these best practices things. So here's our multiple loop here, or rather just a single loop. So we start out the query post per page equals 5, the loop, if have post, while have post the post, and the while, and the else, and the if. Then we can say WP reset query, and then we can then build another query if we need to. This should, just one of these best practices, this should always, if you're ever going to use WP query, make sure to put the reset query on at the end of it. Because if you're building a secondary loop somewhere, this query will mess up that second query. Yes, sir?
Thanks. What's the difference between the WP query then? Is that just for like custom posts and things like that?
Well, so like with WP query then, what you can do is you're building a query and assigning it to an object, and then you can then build other queries, you know. Where this, when you're using WP query, then you're just saying, or sorry, query post, you're saying for every query on the page, assign this filter. And so that's why it's tricky that only use this if you want to change the main loop. If you're going to have secondary loops on the page, use WP query. Okay? So that's why we use this WP reset query. So if we are use secondary loops, they will hopefully will not be affected. Okay, so custom post types, a little bit of talk on that. Oh, and let me show you one example here of this. So here's our WP query now. So I've got my main loop here, right? What I can then say is a random selection of my writing in an H2. And then I've got this unordered list here, where I'm saying random posts equals get posts, and then I'm saying number of posts equals 5, order by equals random. So what this is going to do is it's going to run a query, say get me 5 posts, and then display them at random. For each rand post as post, let's see here, let's clean up some stuff. Display the title as and the link. So now, yep. Thank you. And right here. Yeah. There we go. So now it displays an unordered list of 5. Did I say 5? Yeah, 5. Number of posts 5. And it would display 5 recent posts pulled at random. So this is kind of a fun thing where you've got this second loop now. Stick that over in your sidebar and then say 5 of my recent posts. And then because you have all of the content here, like, you know, you could say, you could say the content or something like. And so what I would do is I do it as a definition list or paragraph tags or something like that. Does anybody use definition lists? Okay, sometimes I think I'm the only person that likes to use definition lists, but okay, just glad to see other people do. Okay, so that is our query post and WP query. Okay, let's see. So now custom post types, right? Hey, we all love custom post types, right? Because they're so radical and so easy to build and everything like that. But now how do we actually make them show up on our page, right? So we can do the same thing with custom post types. So we can use query post alongside with our custom post type. So to do this, we have query post, and then we have post type, and then we say equals the name of our post type. So if we had podcast as a post type, we could say post type equals podcast. Or we could say post type equals, whatever else we've created. I built a shopping cart system actually with custom post types. And so I could say post type equals store, or post type equals products is what my post type was named. And then I can build those products into my main loop just by adding them like that. So in this case, in this second example here, query post, array post type equals array post and movies. So let's say you added this to your main loop on your page. What this could do is you could say assign, bring in all of my movie posts and all of my posts, right? And display them just in line as if they were showing up on the page, right? So I think this is a super handy thing because, they can be, we can keep our like traditional blog, right? By bringing in post types just by using query posts. Okay, so here's a little plugin here from Justin Tadlock. What he did here was he added a filter, which was talked about a little bit earlier today, to actually bring all of those posts into your homepage. So the filter is, pre-get posts. We're running a function called myGetPost, which just says if it is the homepage, add to the query to set the post type, and we can, where's my mouse? Post type is post, page, album, movie, quote, attachment. So with this array here of post types, not only do our posts show up and our movies and our quotes, but also attachments. You could have your attachments show up on the home page and your pages show up on the home page for when they're published. Kind of an interesting little thing. And then we just add that filter so that when the query is done for the home page, all of that stuff will show up too. Now, when else could we use something like this? Any ideas? One great example that that I've done is now it's like, well, I have a custom post type, but I want that to show up in my RSS feed, right? And so instead of this pre-get post, we can say add our custom post types to our RSS feed. We just say if is feed, then we toss our variables in that way, and we can then add our custom post types to our RSS feed. Because like when they first came out, I was like, oh sweet, this is perfect. I've got all this different stuff that I want to do with it. But I was so ticked because as soon as I published it, it didn't show up on the front page, and it didn't show up in my RSS feed. And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't really do anything for me, right? It separated the content out, but sometimes you need to bring it back into your main post content. And so by adding it to your feed, or to your homepage, or to whatever else, it'll show up. Now, the interesting thing here, too, is with this filter here, or the if is home, this will actually show up if you have like your recent posts here. This will actually, your custom posts here, will actually then show up in your recent posts, like widgets and stuff like that. Because it's adding that query also to your sidebar query. So that's one of these things, like if you're going to use query posts, it will add that query to everything on that page, including recent comments, recent posts, different things like that. So it's a really powerful thing sometimes. Okay, so that's a little plugin. And that's about all the major juice I had for you. But I did want to take time to answer questions. Is there any questions? Any code samples we want to look at?
Yeah, quick question.
Sure.
On your BB edit, your autocomplete,
Uh-huh.
is that primary for the template tags?
Yeah, it's so what he asked was on BB Edit, I've got a WordPress thing here, so I can say like PHP the underscore, and here's all of the WordPress template tags and all kinds of stuff like that. So I can say the content, and then it'll give my string, more text, and the strip teaser and all that. This is it's one of the guys at Crowd Favorite, Sean Parker, I think. He released this bundle for BB Edit. There's a similar one for Text Strangler. There's a similar one for TextMate. Yeah, not Text Strangler, I think. What's that?
Is there one for Coda? I think that you can use the next one.
Yeah, I think so. I've got a student of mine who uses the one for Coda. So I think it's Sean Parker, but I can't remember.
Crowd favorite?
Yeah, he's a Crowd Favorite. I would just search for WordPress BB Edit bundle or something like that.
There's one for Coda and down.
Yeah,
And TextMate.
and TextMate. What's that?
It's funny because I was looking for that during your presentation. Bundle for WordPress functions?
It's the handiest thing ever. Anything else? Well, another question. Queries, post types?
Custom taxonomies. I've got something where I would like to show something in a loop with the custom taxonomy, the custom categories, then show everything, and then show the next category, then show all the things under that category.
You'd probably just build a custom page template and then just need to build multiple loops to show all of that different stuff. There is, what what's the tag? There is a taxonomy tag. Anybody? That'll list out the taxonomies for your custom post types and stuff like that. I want to say it's like the taxonomy or something. I know I used it in a plugin. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. You guys ever do this? You're like, well, I built it here once. Let's see. List product categories, I think is what I called it. Oh, it's WP Tag Cloud. So in WP Tag Cloud, this is normally what you would use to show your tag cloud. You can say in the array the taxonomy, and so in this case I said product line, which this goes with my custom post type PayPal shopping thing that I made. So my taxonomy is called product line, and then format is list. And so it outputted all of the categories, in essence, from my product line custom post taxonomy. So yeah, it's just WP Tag Cloud. That's what I was thinking earlier, because you can use this to you could say WP Tag Cloud, and then taxonomy is your categories, and then it could do a tag cloud with your categories, which is kind of backwards thinking.
You
But
can do the same thing with the WP list categories as well.
oh really?
You can set your taxonomy to whatever your custom taxonomy is and just output those.
Interesting. Yeah, good question. Anything else?
Do you know if there's any performance differences between WP query and get post and query post?
I'm sure.
Like
It all uses the same internal
Yeah.
stuff. It's the same.
Yeah.
But is it the same internal stuff?
It is.
Yeah.
It's all using the query.php and the WP dash and WP dash includes. So
Do you ever just do one loop and then use some sort of PHP-based solution to filter it just to not have to do 15 loops?
no. If you look at back on show the 2010. Let me show you sites. I think the 2010 theme is a good example of how to do a multiple loop well and right. 10 minutes. Thanks. Just looking at that page, let's look at their loop.php real fast. What it does really well, I think, is it goes through all of these different loops to kind of, it's, if we want to be real specific here, it's 177 lines of code. But in that we've got, so we start the loop here. So here's just in our gallery category, we have a specific loop for the gallery category. We have a specific loop for, let's see, from the asides category, how to display all other posts. So they've got basically four custom loops on that to display content differently on the home page, just for that 2010 theme. And I think it does it really well. It does really easy, and it's nice and fast. So I don't think there's any performance issues at all in having four. If you had 100 and they were all doing multiple lookups and all kinds of stuff, you might have issues there. But I think if within reason, it's all very fast. Okay. Question? Anything? Nothing?
Do you have any recognition on, can you subclass one of these core functions and override?
Like override any of the loops? There's always filters and stuff that you can add. That's kind of like, I don't know if you saw whose presentation was it? Anyway. Yeah, the webhook one. But it was all about using filters and stuff like that to like as a plugin, you can say like, well, I want to filter the content to strip all of the image tags out and stuff like that. There's lots of stuff that you can do. But yes, many, many things that you can do with filters and hooks and stuff like that. Any other questions? No? Yes?
Can you go to the, I don't know if you have a WordPress dashboard, but one of the things that's kind of a concern of mine when it comes to managing content, when there's several pages and blog posts,
Mm-hmm.
and how the dashboard has a filter and all that. Can that whole thing be custom coded? To have better filtering or,
I know that there's some hooks and filters that you can add to that.
yeah.
I know the one that I've used is this one that'll add like category IDs and stuff like that. I'm not aware of anything specific.
Because right now it just filters it by category.
Category, and you can do date too, and
Blog post.
yeah. I think that's a WordPress core issue.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which part of the loop handles that, do you know?
Well, that's a little bit separate. That's kind of running another loop basically onto the database itself.
Because that's like core work.
Yeah, this loop itself here is more the front end of how stuff actually shows up on your web page.
No, I got it.
But it's a very similar
Yeah.
thing.
I can see that would be like an issue when a blog actually grows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, once again, my name's Jake Spurlock, YSJake on Twitter. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate your, thanks.